Hi, I'm Morgan,
And I'm Megan,
twins and host of M&M Chat.
a monthly podcast that brings together our many commonalities: motherhood, farm life, fitness, chasing our passions, and go chat.
It is our goal to create a show that is positive, real, and fun. Now let's dive into this month's episode.
Welcome back, guys. I feel like even though it's only been a month, and we do our episodes every month, I just feel like this time around it's been a little bit longer in between episodes. It feels like, I don't know, maybe it's just because we've been so busy lately. But Morgan, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Like you said, I feel like it has been a while since we've caught up on our podcast, and it just kind of feels like this is a community that we're developing. And so we would love to hear from you all and to catch up with you as well. But it's going good. We're back into school mode, and so adjusting to schedules after summertime and getting back into the swing of things. I've had a few weddings that I've done flowers for and a few weddings coming up. So that will keep me busy this fall. But I'm really excited for the fall season. I feel like it's sweatshirt weather. The air feels crisp. I've been enjoying going on walks and festive drinks like pumpkin cold brew. So it's been good. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. Back into school routines and um, well, we harvested our first 9 acres of beans, but that's kind of like a funny story in the neighborhood because everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, they're growing already." It was only beans, 9 acres, wasn't a big deal. We're not officially going yet, but I can sense that's coming up here soon. And yeah, I've been enjoying kind of the fall feels too. We are excited, guys, for this episode. We are diving into gospel parenting, and faith is something that is really important to Morgan and I. We grew up going to church. We were part of Crew at Iowa State, Christian organization on campus, and then just after getting married and like having our first kids, Morgan having Dean and me having Andrew. We just want to learn more about what it looks like to be a parent who parents using the gospel, because it's something that we are diving into ourselves right now. And so as we get started, we're like, let's just learn a little bit more about it. So we thought we would just kind of share our takeaways from reading this book this summer. The focus of our podcast episode today is going to be based off of this book, Parenting by Paul David Tripp. And Morgan and I read this summer. So it was each week we read one chapter, so it wasn't too daunting or overwhelming. And we just kind of had our own little book club together. We text each other our takeaways and just kind of talk about it when we were in person as well. And yeah, we just finished it. So we thought this would come at a good time to do this episode. So
Yes,
Morgan, sorry, I was just gonna say, so Morgan, is your like overall like thoughts, like your initial just your thoughts after reading it?
yes, yeah. I feel like this podcast episode is just kind of a nice wrap up for our book club, like you mentioned. And I would say my first initial takeaways is that it really brings into by giving our worries and our stresses and our challenges and struggles over to the Lord. So I feel like a lot of times we're going into everything with like a I want to control the situation type of mindset. And this book really opened my mind to that we need to take a step back and we don't have control over the whole situation and God has control. And so I think that it takes a lot of pressure off of our shoulders as parents, that we can give the control over to God and he has a plan and he is going to use us to help share the gospel to our children. And so my first reactions is that parenting is more of a guide and that we are not here to rule our children. We're here to guide them. And so really having not a ownership mindset of like, yes, they are our children, but they are really God's children. And so we are here as a guide to our kids, but ultimately it will be God's path and plan for our children.
I something that stands out after you said we are like here to guide our children and they're ultimately God's kids was Paul Tripp used the two words ambassador versus ownership mentality. And in our society right now, just in our culture, our generation, a lot of it is like, what can I do to be successful? I can just do a little bit more, or I can reach these higher goals, and it's going to be me that gets there. As if I just put my head down and focus, I will get there. Which we want to have goals, like it's good to reach for our dreams and like go after things, but we have to do that remembering that God's the one who provides it for us. And being an ambassador versus an owner, like, yes, the kids are ours, but like you said, God ultimately gave them to us, they're ultimately His first. And so if we think of an ambassador mindset instead, it's us representing God. So it's us glorifying Him through our parenting, through raising our kids. And so I thought that was just a neat perspective, like just the gospel perspective versus a worldly perspective. I also
agree.
Yeah, I also think that parenting is something that God calls people to do. So it's just another way that we can glorify God, whether it be parenting or whether it be through your career or if it's through mission work. However God calls you, it's something that He has called you for a reason to do. And it gives us that mentality that we want to do well for God. Like we want to follow His law. Like we don't have to be perfect, but we want to do His work the best way that we can to glorify Him.
Yes. So even in like the mundane moments of like folding laundry or disciplining for the 5th time that day about not pulling the dog's tail. Like perseverance through those different moments that are opportunities to be able to guide our kids to the gospel and be able to help our children understand that they should be like want to follow God because the God provides us and the promise that He has made us. We will be able to use those opportunities with kids to help them understand as well.
Yes, I agree with that. And the main reason why we wanted to read this book this summer is just because we want to feel more equipped with how to go about situations like that, or how can we concretely point our kids to Jesus, and how when we get into tough situations, like you said, the disciplining 6 times a day, how can we stay patient and remember what our goal is, what our mission is through parenting. And so this book, it was just a way that we could get our toes wet. It was actually a book that I had gotten during Andrew's baby dedication class at the church. And so since I had gotten it, I wanted to read it and then ask Morgan if she wanted to read it this summer as like a book club. And so I think that's great is when you can read a book with other people and talk about it, you soak it in a little bit more. So whether it's like 2 people like we did this summer, or whether it's a whole entire community, a church community or a friend group, it's cool to be able to actually talk about it and actually apply some of it and use those examples from your life that you can actually apply it to. Or even like examples from the past that you're like, man, I wish I would have done this differently in that situation. I can next time. So you can learn from it.
Yep, exactly. Yes. So I think the reason I wanted to read it a lot is Dean turns 2 in 2 months, and we are definitely entering that like tantrum stage. And I know with Andrew, you're a little early yet before you will start like having to discipline him. But it's like you said, it's good to prepare yourself now with a toolbox that has different tools in it that you can take in a year from now when Andrew is running around. And so I feel like this was a good time to read it. Like, yeah, we're preparing ourselves for future opportunities and situations. And lately, Dean has definitely been challenging me and testing me in different ways that I have never been challenged before, of like trying to stay patient and also trying to give him grace, because in this book he talks a lot about, honestly, when we are parenting our kids, we oftentimes need to be parenting ourselves as well, because a lot of the same things that our kids are going through, we're going through also, maybe just in a different way. Like, for example, kids, when, like, he talked a lot about how kids, when they act up, it's because they want authority, like they want to be their own boss. And how many times do we want to be our own boss? Like, we want it our way right now. Convenience nowadays, we want it right now, in this time, this place, this location. We want it very quickly. We want to have our desires met for different things, whether that's being at a coffee shop, you want your coffee to come right away, or if that's being at work and you want the printing machine to print your documents and not sit there and misfeed, like, we are also just like our kids, where we get impatient and we want to be our own boss and we want to control and have authority over the situation. So I thought it was really good that he talked about putting yourself in your kids' shoes, and that a lot of times when you're parenting them about the situation, we oftentimes need to be parenting ourselves, because really, what is the reason, like, why we want our kids to do something? Like, if I want Dean to brush his teeth or take a bath, I want him to do it right now, because it would help me in that moment to just have him do it instead of having to fight with him about it. So I'm sitting there wanting to control the situation. He's wanting to control the situation, and we're just feeding on each other. So how can we both step back and analyze the situation and come to, like, yes, right now, Dean, you need to take a bath. And I understand that you might want to stay outside and play, but right now, mom's asking you to take a bath, and God tells us to listen to our parents. And we want to be able to listen to our parents, because that means that you're going to go to bed on time and you're going to get a lot of sleep and you're going to feel better tomorrow. Like, obviously he's one, so he doesn't understand all of those dots, but I feel like explaining and using explaining to him, like, mom's not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to just take you from outside. Like, I have reasons of why mom's doing this, that we need to take a bath so we can get to bed. And I feel like just like putting it into, like, getting down on eye level and chatting with him and like helping him to understand, and also being reasonable, that not just like, because I said so, I'm mom,
Yeah, there was three different tactics that Paul Tripp used or said in the book that oftentimes parents go to for immediate results. Because, like you said, you want it right now, like it's time to take a bath. That's because mommy said so. Or if you're at the grocery store and a kid is throwing a tantrum, parents automatically get like, this has never happened to me, so I don't want to put words in other parents' mouth, but I can just imagine that they get kind of like warm and they'll like get anxious and like, oh my gosh, like my child's acting up right now. What can I do to like stop a scene from happening? And so he said that there's three ways that people often try to deal with it: with a reward, with shame, or with fear. So a reward would be like, if you stop, mommy will buy you a snack at the cash registers, and you can, like, as long as you stop right now, then you can get a treat. That would be a reward. So like giving a reward for immediate behavior results. Shame would be like guilt tripping them, making them feel guilty or making them feel bad. Like you're saying like, I'm so embarrassed by your attitude right now. I can't believe you're doing this at the store. Like there's other people around. You shouldn't act like this. So like making them feel ashamed of themselves. And then fear would be like threatening. So you just wait till we get home, or you're going to be grounded if you don't knock it off. Those kind of things. So those are three tactics that oftentimes parents tend to go to because it adds immediate results. And I have to admit, like used the reward system at school before. I've said like, okay, if we can be quiet for the rest of reading small groups, then we might be able to get a few extra minutes of recess or something like that. Like I've used that before in my class. Or I've also used like, if we're not quiet, then you guys will be sitting in here at recess time. Like I've used that one too, like the fear of missing out on recess. And I know that sometimes it's just like we need immediate. And so it's like we've all done it before. But like you said, Morgan, how can we explain to our kids, point our kids to Jesus and try to get at the heart level of this situation? Like if it's just a one-time deal and you explain it to them and they understand, okay, great. But if it's a constant behavior problem that you're dealing with as a parent, or it's a constant behavior problem you're dealing with as a class, even like as a teacher, then what's the bigger issue? Like what's at the heart level that's causing them to act out like that, or causing that behavior to be a constant and a repetitive behavior. So then if you get at the heart level, it might take longer to try to improve like the situation, but then they would actually be understanding that they are in need of Jesus just like we are, and that we all have areas that we can work on, like in our own mindset and in our own desires in our own heart. And so if we can get at what those actually are, then we can work on them ourselves, our kids can work on them, we can work on them as a family, and know that God is helping us walk through them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
agree.
I feel like the like kind of bribery, like you were talking about, that one's probably the hardest for me, because it can be so easy to sit there and say, okay, if you come with mommy and you listen to mommy and we do this right now, then we'll get to go and play outside for 5 minutes longer. Like that one is so hard to do, because I feel like they respond to that. They're like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And that one has been the most challenging for me. And then also I kind of like, one thing I loved this book so much, but I do wish they gave more examples of like the tips and tricks in action, because I also struggle with, like, in the Bible it says that our children are supposed to follow your parents' rules and like listen to your parents. That's one of our commandments. And so if your kids continue to not listen, like with Dean pulling Diesel's tail all the time, I've put him in timeout a couple of times for that, because he might hurt himself if he pulls on Diesel's tail and Diesel comes around and like gets upset about it. Or like Dean might hurt Diesel by pulling his tail too hard, and Diesel might whimper, like there could be a dangerous situation there. Or if Diesel's so easygoing, but if Dean ever pulls someone else's dog's tail, you never know other people's dogs, how they'll react. Like Diesel's so easygoing that it's not that big of a deal, but like I'm trying to teach him for other dogs as well. And so I'm like, he kept doing it. So I finally put him in timeout, and I was like, if you do it one more time, you're going in timeout, because mommy said no 5 times. And so then it's like, there has to be some sort of consequence to, though. Like like you said, getting to the root of the problem, but also like there comes to a point where your kids have to have consequences, but also be loving with it. So like the time I put him in timeout, I gave him a big hug and I said, mommy understands that it's hard for you to understand that we don't pull Diesel's tail. Like you think it's a game, but it's not a game. So mommy's putting you in timeout because she said no. I still love you, but you're sitting in timeout for 5 minutes because you keep pulling Diesel's tail. And so I tried to like connect, but also still give him grace and say, I love you. Like, I still love you unconditionally, even though you're in trouble, but you have a consequence because you not listen.
Yes, like it does not mean no discipline. It just means, like you said, compassion, discipline with some tenderness. And then also like you provided some loving wisdom and forgiveness, like clean slate after the consequence, like not holding grudges against your kids. But having that tenderness, and like we all sin, like it's okay. Like you need to learn from this. Like, I'm going to give you this consequence so you learn, but like, know that you don't, like, once you ask for forgiveness, you don't need to hold on to that anymore, whether it be small or big. Cause like when they're toddlers, it's little things like pulling Diesel's tail. But like this book was talking about examples from when your kids are in high school, like also in middle school, high school, when it's like bigger behaviors that are definitely more detrimental. It could be small behaviors as well in middle school, high school, but oftentimes they're a little bit bigger. And so having that practice now when they're toddlers and then just keep going with it as they get older. But like not treating the opportunities as hassles either, because sometimes we just get annoyed with the fact that we have to deal with it. We take it personally. And so it was a good reminder in this book to not take the situation and the opportunities personally, and knowing that it's always going to be a work in progress. Parenting, us as people, like God walks on us through our kids so that we can walk, or so that he can walk through us for our kids. I loved that quote in this book too, because it definitely is something that it's a work in progress.
Yes, for sure. I found in Ephesians 6:4, it says, "Do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." And I thought that first sentence, "Do not provoke your children to anger," was really like key in that verse, because it can be so easy, like you said, for us to get impatient or for us to get annoyed because, like you said, we take it personal. Like, I'm like, why can't you just like listen? I'm giving you instructions. Like, I mentioned this like 5 times. Like, I'm getting tired. It's the end of the night. And so we can take it personally and we can be like, can't you just listen to mommy? And but it says, "Do not provoke your children." Like, our children aren't doing it. They don't realize that it's upsetting us. They just want what they want when they want it, and they want to do it when they want to do it. And I feel like if we remember, like, we are the adults, so if we bring ourselves down to our children's level, then that's when we start to escalate the situation. So it can be really hard to have to walk back and discipline for the 5th time about the same thing. But if you walk back with grace, you walk back with forgiveness, you walk back with a calm presence and a calm voice, then I feel like your children are going to respond to that. Like the other day, Dean was having a tantrum in his high chair. He just kept throwing things and playing with his food, and he was like screaming. And I said, "Dean, that's outside voice. We need to use inside voice." He was just getting all worked up and he was getting really mad. I ended up just like taking him out of his high chair and took him into the other room for a minute, just so he could calm down and I could calm down. We could get out of the scene. And then like we had a heart to heart Dean and mom moment. I was just like, "Dean, we are at dinner. We need to act like we're at dinner." And we went back to the dinner and finished up. But just even changing rooms for a minute helped us both to be like, let's re-enter the situation happier.
Yeah, yes, giving grace and room for learning, I feel like too. Just having that moment and having them take a time to learn it also. Um, the other thing I was gonna say is like in the classrooms, most of my examples are from teaching since Andrew's only 8 months. We haven't quite had the tantrum stage yet. But in the classroom, I know I noticed that the way that I handle a situation, my attitude, my reactions, if I don't take it personally, it goes so much smoother because it's not an attack on you. Like the kids are not saying, my goal is to make my mom mad today, or my goal is to make my
No.
dad mad, or I'm gonna make my teacher so angry with me. Like that's not their goal. And so if we take ourselves out of the equation and we handle it professionally, if in the case of being a teacher, or handle it without yelling and screaming and escalating the situation, it usually ends that much quicker, gets resolved that much quicker, and everyone just feels a little better about it.
Yes, 100%. To go off of what you said on page 36 of this book, it says, Able parents who pride themselves in keeping the law tend to give their children more law than grace and are quicker to judge than to understand. And able parents tend to want their children to be their trophies, a public demonstration of their ability. It's hard to live with people who deny weakness because people who deny weakness tend not to be patient, loving, and understanding with people who are weak. And I think that's really key because it's like when we think about our kids, we want them to feel loved. We want them to feel like unconditional, like we're not going to judge them, like we're supposed to be the safety net, like we're supposed to be the people they can be 100% themselves around. And then that just like I want to be that parent that's patient, loving, and understanding. I don't want to be the one that is quick to judge or quick to enforce the law over grace. Like I want to be someone that they can come to and trust. And like you said, with what you were saying with the students and stuff, like when you enter the situation and you don't take it personally, like you're going to be a lot easy. The situation's going to dissolve a lot quicker. And then I also feel like they will feel like next time they're going to want to maybe they're going to want to behave a little bit better because they're like, okay, well, like I also think negative energy, kids like kids like
They feed on
both
the
good and
energy.
bad attention. As long as they're getting attention, they feed on that. So it's going to carry into the next time that situation happens again.
Oh yeah, yes, definitely. Also admitting to kids, I feel like it's important to admit to them when you make a mistake also. This book gave a lot of good examples of when parenting does not go perfect because we can talk about all these hypothetical situations and we can talk about what the book says would be beneficial in parenting using the gospel, but we are human and we do sin and we do make mistakes as well, whether that be raising our voice, like saying something we regret to our kids, or like threatening a consequence that we know we're not actually going to follow through with, like I'm going to ground you for a month. I mean, I don't know if I would say that or not. Who knows? That hasn't come up yet. But just like threats or different things that you might say and then realize like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that. Letting your kids know you're sorry as well, I think is important. It lets them know that you're not perfect. You're human as well. And also teaches them how to ask for forgiveness, maybe to their friends or to their future relationships. So it teaches them what that means and how you move on from that and how you can forgive other people. Just in general, I feel like the biggest thing is going to prayer and asking God for help, asking Him to walk you through different situations. Like if there's something that's coming up, I my hope is that I can pause and pray to God first and have Him help me with tough situations through parenting. Like this book has taught me that you should do that first, and then you can always walk into the situation later, with God's help and just His guidance and His
Mhm.
wisdom. So that's one thing that I want to take from this book is like, I'm not doing this parenting thing alone. One, you have your family, your husband, your spouse, your other kids. If you have other kids, you have like family members, church community, all of that. So you're definitely not doing it alone in general, but also God's there walking you through every step of the way.
Yeah. Um, I think to go along with that too, on page 180 of the book, it says, overburdened, overwhelmed, exhausted, and discouraged people tend to enter situations like not prepared and can take things more personal. So I also feel like self-care and taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're not overwhelmed or we don't have too much anxiety or we don't have too much on our plates, which like right now I'm kind of in that delicate balance of like I feel like I'm putting on all these different hats. And I feel like when I'm home, I'm present with Dean and I'm trying to be like endurance and perseverance. But like to be honest, sometimes at night I'm just so exhausted. Like I feel like I'm just like by the time I put him in bed, I'm just like out. Like the other night, I literally fell asleep on the couch at 8 p.m. or like, but sometimes I have flowers to do after he goes to bed. And so like I know myself, like I feel like I um can put on a smiley face, and like I'm pretty good at separating and taking off the wool hat or taking off the flower hat and myself from it. And when I'm in mom mode, I can like be the person he needs me to be. I have some anxiety and stuff like that, and being able to have more quiet time and space for being able to just play and enjoy and have a relaxing like weekend and stuff like that.
That's definitely an area that I am working on too, because with just the changes of a new career, a new job this school year, and like you said, just having the different hats, I feel like right now I'm overworking myself, just keeping too many things on my plate, which is all good things and all things that I am passionate about. But it definitely causes me to feel like a little bit overwhelmed or anxious or stressed. And that's something that you can tell bleeds into other parts of your life as well. And so I put so much stress on myself to be like present and to try to be like the best that I can be at every situation. And sometimes you just end up getting too much, too overworked, too overwhelmed that the only thing you can do is like rest in God. And I'm learning that right now during the season, because it's like the most beautiful season I've ever had, having Andrew and marriage and like being young in my professional field. It's definitely a beautiful season, farming, all of it, but it's also hard. And so resting in God has pretty much been my motto lately.
Yeah, I love that. I love that saying, resting in God. Like, yeah, it might be hard to have like to take physical rest, but having physical rest or having rest in the Lord. I love that saying because it could just be a prayer on your way to work, or like you said, a prayer before you enter into a parenting situation, or a prayer but with your son before bed. Like I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have only about 4 minutes left before the time. So let's just talk about what we hope to implement. And we kind of just mentioned our current struggles. One more verse that I had found, it was from Proverbs 22:6. It said, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And so I love that too, because if we keep God at the forefront, our children will grow up to love Jesus, and they will not depart from it, and they will be able to then continue on God's mission.
I love that too. That's a great saying. Um, so my big takeaways or my action steps that I am going to do leading from this book is just remembering to point our kids to God, pointing trying to point them to God in just life situations through things that we see. Sometimes we forget to just even mention God. And it's crazy because he's all around everywhere you look. You can even during situations that aren't disciplining. If it's just hanging out outside while the kids are little, you can say, like, let's look around and see all the things that God created and point out the things that he created. And just mentioning the Lord's name more often in the household is one action step that I want to take. And just taking these different lessons that I learned and trying to implement them in just situations. And so that's my next step. Pretty basic, but how about you, Morgan?
I think that is great. I think, like you said, just mentioning God, because I think a lot of like getting to the root of your heart and stuff starts with talking about God in the happy moments. Like, yeah, like you said, the other day, it's funny that you mentioned that, because the other day, we were on a walk, and I should have mentioned these things are from God, but we were walking, and I was like, Dean, do you hear the birds chirping? Look at the leaves blowing in the wind. I was like, there was a frog that hopped out in front of us. I'm like, Dean, there was a frog. And it's, if you really just like seeing things through his eyes has helped me to like look around again, and like seeing the trees. I started to notice that the trees are starting to turn, and it's a beautiful world that God created. So yeah, like you said, we can just look around us and see God's creation. And it's just fascinating. And so I think I'm right there with you. I think my next action step is to just pray more with Dean, talk about God more, and to continue to have those conversations with him, even while he's a toddler, and just try to portray that God is all around us and he's here with us. And um, I think that will help then going into those other parenting situations, if you have that positive energy in the happy moments.
Yes, yes, for sure. So guys, definitely check this book out. It is Paul David Tripp, Parenting, 14 Gospel Principles That Can Radically Change Your Family. Highly recommend it. Let us know if you read it, and let us know what other parenting books you have read, parenting in general or parenting with the gospel. We'd love to hear and be able to share those with our listeners. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Morgan, it was great talking to you tonight and just kind of recapping the book, and kind of wrapping up our little book study that we did this summer.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll chat with you next time. Bye.
Bye.